Are you guys ready to get rolling? We're about
Yeah,
minutes over.
we're ready. We're ready to party whenever you are.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We'll have some more folks who will be joining us throughout this. We
Mhm.
had many more folks registered than who are on here currently, so I know we'll have some other folks. Welcome everybody back to our Pockets Change Financial Literacy and Social Justice as a social justice tool, and we're really excited about that. This is part 2 in a 3-part series. Our first part was held back in July. And those of you who are on here, if you didn't attend that one, it's available on our website. So you can check that one out first. You can go back to it. You can do whatever. It's going to be there for a while. And then we also have part 3 coming up on September 22nd. So you can come back and more information will be coming out about that as well. But we're really excited about the opportunity to partner with Pockets Change. They did an amazing job in July. You probably, if you were there, you remember the rap battle that I completely dominated. It was embarrassing, I think, for everybody else on here except for me. And so that's going to be a fond memory for me moving forward. And who knows what memories will be made today, but we're glad you're here. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves and take the reins from here, but we're really excited about this partnership and looking forward to learning a lot more today. So welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And wow, if we could imbue the swagger that Ronnie has into everybody, then we know we will have done what we needed to do. Thank you. Thank you. What's going on? We're Pockets Change. We teach financial resilience, going deeper than the literacy, talking about the actual practicals and the way we feel about things. Because if we don't take control of the way we feel about these things, our feelings will take control of us. I am Dialect. I'm the director of pedagogy, and we have Kai here, who wasn't here with us last time. But so Kai, feel free to share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kai. I'm so sad I couldn't be here last time, but I'm one of our teaching artists. I'm a poet. I'm a youth worker. I love doing poetry with young people, and I'm just really excited to kind of be here with y'all and keep doing this really awesome work that we love doing.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking today about financial resilience as a tool for social justice. And today we're going to be going over our habits and going over advocacy. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, and there's stuff in our curriculum. Please feel free to derail us at any time. This is not a save your questions till the end kind of party. If you want to do a deeper dive, if you have an anecdote you want to share, if you want to break something down, it's all good. We're happy to do that. These are the community agreements that we tend to have for our online discussions. This is stuff that we've generated with students, and things have changed, and we're always going and growing. One thing, I forget if I talked about this last time, but when it comes to the idea of stepping up and stepping back, that's different in the digital space. And it's more difficult to gauge how your students like to engage, like at least quickly. So one of the things that we do is we share that any type of engagement that's comfortable for you in these types of settings is good for us. If you are a typer who prefers to type everything out, that's all good. If that is stressful and messy to you, and I know there are a lot of people like that. I'm like that. As you can see, I'm a very verbose person. I like to talk, so I'll be talking. If you need to unmute, please let us know, raise your hand, just unmute and come and share your feelings. So we're gonna go into it. So last time we were talking about the broad overall. Today is about habits and self-advocacy. Next time on September 22nd, we're talking about community advocacy and values. And that's going to dig, I'm very excited about that one. Today's going to be a good party too. Today is going to be more lighthearted. And I think the next time is a little heavier, but it's really impactful stuff that I'm looking forward to jamming with y'all about that. And I think we'll get some good, lively discussions. So again, to remind y'all, if you were here last time, the 5 steps to financial resilience are buy-in, making sure that people get down with what you're doing, understanding the systems that you create and the systems that we live under and have to navigate and figure out, the habits, which we're going to be talking about heavily today, and advocacy. Habits just being the repeated things that we do, and advocacy meaning how we represent ourselves and our peoples, and the final part, values, which we'll be going into in depth next time. So when it comes to habits and values and advocacy, one of the big things that we always get from folks is about banking. Students want to know about banking, parents want to know about banking, teachers want to know about banking. Banking is weirdly mysterious for being a business that is mad ubiquitous, right? It exists everywhere, and most of us have some sort of interaction with it, whether or not we are banked. There's plenty of people who are unbanked but still have great familiarity with it. So we break down with students banks as not only an example of ways you can advocate for yourself, but a pathway for you to start navigating these systems like we were talking about last time. So feel free to share in chat. And I would love, Kai, if you wanted to verbalize some of this stuff. This is something that we ask of students. If you have a bank, what do you like? What do you not like about your bank? Say one thing of each. And if you don't have a bank, what have you heard about banks that would make you not want to open an account? And Kai, if you could share the first one, and I'll share a little story about myself during my unbanked days.
Yeah, so I do have a bank. I am with a credit union, and I'm a big rep for the credit unions. One thing I do like is that I feel like I have a much more personal experience when I either have customer service issues or just when I'm looking for support when it comes to my accounts. I think they do a really great job of building that sense of community so that I don't just feel like a number. What I don't love is that my bank is in Massachusetts, where I'm from. And so, right, the hard thing with credit unions sometimes can be the access. Sometimes if you're trying to do things mobile style, it's not always super up to date. So that's been one of the drawbacks for me. But overall, I would say I really like my banking experience. But yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. You know, what you're saying that is a bug to me is a feature. I'm also a credit union supporter. And I like the fact that my bank is in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, which is very far from New York City, because when I put my money in there, I know it's staying in there. It's not coming out. But I'll share a little bit about not having a bank. And I remember being unbanked when I was in college and I was working a job in the mailroom of a law office. And the bank that I was with, there was some identity fraud, and it was like $500-600 that were taken out. And because it was Citibank at the time, and I'm calling them out because, you know, it is what it is, Citibank did not have any sort of protection for when you had your identity taken. This was a while ago. And we proved everything. We let them know it wasn't me, all that kind of stuff. And they were like, well, sorry. I was like, what? Really? You're not going to protect my money? Then what am I doing here? So I left Citibank, and I was using a check cashing place for months because I was so disrupted in my trust that I was willing to pay like the kind of exorbitant fees to cash my check because I didn't know a place that I could trust. And it took me a while to get over that before I started banking again. Wanted to see some other stuff in there. Oh, from Ronnie, they process charges before they process deposit. Oh, overdraft fees. So, you know, there was a big class action lawsuit about that. And I remember I was on tour in Europe, and a bank bought my bank. This is the one I found that I liked. And I came back, and all of the money from my tour I had deposited, and you know, you're on the road and everything is very weird and difficult and all, but like I deposited all the money, I had my expenses, and they did that exact thing where they processed all the charges for all my deposits. I should have had like hundreds, probably like $1,000 in profit at the bank. And when I got home, it was in the negative, and it was this whole big kerfuffle. And when I finally got all that stuff together, they had a class action lawsuit, and I got sent a check for $7 to pay me back for all that. Oof, which is, you know, this is part of why people don't trust banks. Because again, I just told you, I was like, at least twice I've been hurt by that. My bank is everywhere, and that's very useful when traveling. It's from Saria. I hate when industries, what industries they're invested in, and their minimum account balance to avoid bank fees are really high. Ooh, those account balance minimums, those are really tough on folks. From April, Ronnie, that's a huge issue. When I was a single mom, this caused me so many issues and so much money I obviously didn't have. Yeah, you know, I feel like the overdraft protection thing is like, I feel like we're talking this one a lot in the workshop, like the thing where you buy the 12 CDs for a penny, and then you can cancel later, but if you don't go through a bunch of hoops, it ends up costing you a bunch of money. They're counting on, April, you being a single mom. And I don't know if, you know, non-single moms out there, that's a very busy life. So little stuff like that is going to fall by the wayside, and it's going to end up costing you money because they're counting on you not having the time and energy for this. This creates the kind of situation that we have with students where a lot of our kids don't trust banks at all because this is the majority of what they've heard. Oh, here's some good stuff from Jeremy. I like the fact that I can deposit and transfer funds 24/7 now. Oh, using your debit card solely does open your account to fraud. Yeah, that's one of the things. Credit, again, there's so much catch-22s in these things. Credit is difficult because what if I don't pay this off, and it can pile up and all of that. But credit is more secure because these companies do have more mechanisms for making you whole and for preventing loss. When you're doing a debit card, there is a lot more like that that's possible. So let's talk a little bit about banks. One of the big things, oh, more from April, by the way. Something I do like is I could open an account for my teenagers and tie it to mine so I can monitor it. That is a great option that not all banks have, but more banks have that nowadays. One thing that's really wild about our students and banks, and probably a lot of adults too, I think most of y'all know this, but a big thing we need to explain to students is that banks are a business. Banks are a private business. Banks are not a public utility. They feel like they are. And funny enough, like a lot of their inefficiencies and red tape, they feel like the post office or other things that are public utilities. So you kind of get this idea that these things are services. My wife, who's in financial planning, she really loves and insists on calling these things products, because these are things that you purchase and spend money on. And if we can think of these things as products that we buy, then we can have a different relationship with how we manage them. Because you don't complain to the post office or ask them to change your service, because the post office just is what it is. It's a utility that does its thing. These banks are here for specific reasons, and they need to serve whatever you need them for. Checking accounts and savings accounts aren't the same thing. Most of us treat them like they're the same thing. We'll have both of them. We'll keep all of our stuff in there. And it's how savings doesn't remain savings, because if that $500 that you didn't spend is sitting in your checking account, you're going to end up spending it. Even if it's sitting in your savings account that's in the same place as your checking account. I'm ranting a bit here. I know we're doing high level stuff about the kids, but y'all know that the big conversation that needs to be had is that these are all things that you can purchase if you need them, when you need them. These are not things that, like we were saying at the post office, you just need to have an address. You just need to have stamps. You just need to have your stuff together. This is not a symbol of adulthood. This is a product that you buy when you need it. Similar to a car can feel like a symbol of adulthood, but it's actually a thing that you purchase, not something that's provided to you. So these are the typical bank products. And then we talk a lot about the bank account features. Kai, what is your vibe on the way that we work with kids on the features, and how that's a little bit different from just talking about the products themselves?
Yeah, I think the big thing with talking about the features is that more than anything, that is something that most of the young people we work with have not had much time to even think about, right? Because of the idea that the bank is kind of this public service. A lot of times even, and this is the thing that we'll get into even more with this particular activity is, a lot of times you just go to the bank that your parents have, or the one that maybe is near your house, or the one that a lot of people in your neighborhood use. And because of that, students don't think about these things. And that's why we think it's so important to walk them through these like basic fees, right, that come with using these products, and it also helps students be able to sniff out if they're getting, right, a good deal. So, in terms of those monthly fees, that it can be between $5 a month and $25 a month. That means that when they're looking at that bank and they see what those fees are, they can say, this is on the high end. I can find something different if I want it. And that's why that's kind of the important part of walking through what may seem like kind of the basics or the obvious things, but that catch people off guard, right? Because banks are literally banking on you not having the time to look at these things. I think we've also noticed working with these things that a lot of students tend to be more aware of the online banking options, right? In like the world of smartphones, a lot of them might know what Mint is. They might know kind of what those services are. And so we're actually really exposing them in a lot of ways to the basics of what, their parents might know about banks. And so I think that it's been really helpful walking them through some of these things for sure.
Yeah, we got a great question from Ronnie about how do we share info about cloud-based banking rather than brick and mortar when we are not as familiar or comfortable with those. You know, there's not a lot of difference with the brick and mortar versus the cloud-based. There's a couple of important points, and I think we're going to get into that in some of the next slides. And it's also something that's detailed more heavily in the curriculum. Brick and mortar banks versus cloud-based banks are often a question of high yield versus accessibility. The big thing with your cloud-based banks is they don't pay rent. They don't pay people who are tellers. So they can afford to do things a little bit differently, and they can afford to give you a higher interest rate. The other banks that are more brick and mortar, they're not giving you the high interest rate. The interest rates are actually like pretty next to nothing, but they give you accessibility in ways that you don't have from these cloud places. You can walk in there and talk to somebody about what you're doing. You can walk in there and deposit cash if you are a cash getting person. If you're trying to mix the cash that you get paid with online banking, it's not that easy unless you also have a brick and mortar. You would need a brick and mortar to add to it. So that's the general thing that we talk about. Kai, am I missing anything about the online banking that's important?
I don't think you're missing anything about what's important, but I think one thing that's really important about this question, right, is it's part of the work that we're doing as educators as we give this information to students, which is thinking about our own anxiety. So for instance, you know, my parents always taught me brick and mortar is the way to go. You cannot trust the internet. Putting your money there is like putting your money into the sky, right? Literally putting it into a cloud. You don't know what's going to happen. And so I think as educators, part of getting to know some of this information for ourselves is so that we can give this information to our students without putting our own personal anxieties of what we've been taught about what it looks like to be responsible with money, not putting that onto the information we're giving our students, right? And that's a big part of why we love doing these PDs is because it helps us ask ourselves, right? We said in those community kind of like guidelines, asking why, not just asking why the material we're giving you, but asking why of ourselves, right? What are we uncomfortable teaching? Where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great to dig into. And, you know, I love the thing about, you know, the money feeling like it's going up into the sky. One of the things to talk about with that is, I think we have some slides in our curriculum about this, is banks are insured by the FDIC. And that's all banks. That's your brick and mortar banks and that are your online cloud banks. Now, one thing that is important to talk about is what about these things that do banking services but aren't exactly banks? And the big distinction is, are they insured by the FDIC or are they not regulated at all? PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, these places are rife with fraud. And even when they're not full of fraud, there's a lot of danger with what happens. I know folks who have worked as auditors for Venmo, and if they suspect you are doing something illicit, and illicit meaning not even necessarily illegal, sometimes it may just be a moral thing, they have the authority to shut down your account and freeze your funds without any sort of trial or even really notification. It just happens. Those places are unsafe. And if you have a business that could be misconstrued as something illicit very easily, and it's something as simple as if you charge $20 a session and someone looks at that and goes, they're getting a lot of $20 payments. I wonder if they're selling drugs. They can just shut it down. So I think the big distinction to understand is what is being regulated by the same forces and what is not, because those are the things that you really have to look out for. Roll along a little bit. So again, these features are how we interact with these things. And when we bring this to the group, we start talking about all of the things that work for us, all the things that don't work for us. And then if you were designing your own bank, how would you do this? And a really important thing about it is making sure that these banks that they create are not utopian utilities that don't exist, but are businesses and do make money. Because I want them to figure out for themselves, because it's a great activity for the kids who like to design and like to build new businesses to try that out. But I think the more important thing is making it so that kids recognize what are their deal makers and deal breakers. What are the things that matter to them? If Having a monthly fee really stresses you out, then you would design a bank that doesn't have monthly fees. If you want to get rid of ATM fees, there are revenue models that don't have ATM fees and reimburse you. Schwab Bank reimburses you for your ATM fees, even when traveling. They reimburse you for your, wow, it's like so much money that you get back, because Schwab doesn't actually care about getting their money out of that. Schwab has a brokerage account that you sign up with, and they're expecting you to invest money and make them way more money off of that. So looking at the ways that banks make money and being okay with them or not okay with them. You don't have to love every aspect of your bank, but you do have to feel okay with it, or you're not going to interact. If you think that your bank is just a part of the evil system that is doing bad stuff, you're not going to put your money in there. You're not going to save properly. You're not going to build those habits. So we use these to get kids to understand what their values are around banks and banking, and putting together their own things and what they would like to do with it. We engage their creativity with the unique value proposition being, what is your little personal aspect that you bring to it? And we have them write down these specific special things. We then go into how you articulate that you want to open your bank and how you're going to explain how you do what you do. When we were doing last month's session where Ronnie blazed the tracks and spit the hot fire, we weren't just doing that so that we could show off Ronnie's impressive verbal skills. The reason why rhymes and battles work and are popular is because there's symmetry. I don't know if y'all know that, y'all visual cats, visual symmetry is so very important. There have been studies shown that people are more likely to get jobs if they are deemed symmetrical or beautiful. And it's not just because the people hiring want to date them. I mean, maybe that's in there too. It's because it's about trust. The real reason why actors, why news anchors, why politicians tend to be more symmetrical or good looking is because it inspires trust. When you take that out of the visual realm, the thing that inspires trust, the symmetry, is found in musicality. It's why, if you ever have gone, I don't know if any of you have gone to a rap battle, people say all sorts of random stuff that doesn't necessarily relate to anything. But because it rhymes, people believe it. It's why slogans work. Slogans that have nothing to do with anything. Might makes right. An apple a day makes send the doctor away. Like, what? No, like go to the doctor even if you're eating a lot of produce. I don't understand who told you to do that. One thing that I actually do in every classroom, I've done this for more than 10 years and it always works. I to illustrate this, I will walk up to a kid with straight hair and say, we're gonna battle right now. We're gonna battle. Watch, I'm gonna do a battle. We're gonna battle. How you gonna beat me with your rap flow? Look at you with your lopsided afro. Always we've got laughter. And then we stop. We go, stop, wait, but they don't have an afro. They've got a bob. It's a whole different haircut. I'm lying. I'm literally lying. And y'all laughed like I said something impactful and powerful. Why? Simply because it rhymed. Aside from rhyme, we also use metaphor to get people to understand where we're coming from. Whether for good or ill, the Dr. King, I was dream speech, climbing the mountaintop. He's not a mountain climber. He's talking about creating a visual in your mind. When Hitler said that the Jewish people were vermin and were dogs, he was literally dehumanizing. For good or for ill, metaphor makes it easier to inspire people to, give them breath. Y'all know the meaning of inspire is to breathe in, right? To give them breath so they can take the action they want to do next. And to make that happen, you have to be specific. That's why these speeches end up being much longer, because they give you the rhyme, they give you the slogan, and then they give you instructions. The symmetry is what makes it all work and make sense. So we use these visual and verbal metaphors and pieces of symmetry to get people to get down with us. So one of the things that we do with the kids is then have them design what a bank looks like. So that includes logo, that includes a slogan, and that includes the color scheme. Y'all notice when we look at these logos and slogans, the commonalities in them, right? What's some stuff that y'all see in there? Kai, I'm giving away the plot, clicking ahead. What's up with all of the blue and green?
So the thing with blue and green is, I don't know about y'all, but they're very like calming colors, right? They elicit, green literally because money, right? But there's a reason why, you know, that blue isn't like highlighter blue. That might make me feel a little intense, but I don't know about y'all, but when I see Charles Schwab, you know, I'm picturing, you know, the waves, and maybe I'm on vacation and I'm looking at, you know, the blue sky. There's an element of relaxation that comes with looking at those colors, right? And that's part of what we're also kind of training students to look at. Meanwhile, you know, Wells Fargo, you know, we got running horses, we got red, we got fire, you know, we got kind of like this boldness that if you're trying to be bold with your money, maybe Wells Fargo is the place for you, right? That, or at least that's what might be what they want you to think, right?
It's funny that you say that, because like when I see the stagecoach, the thing I think about is robbing, right? Robbing a stagecoach. That's the thing. It's like, what, y'all trying to rob stagecoaches in here? Because they're looking like they're running from something. So let's pull it to color psychology. So this is a marketing advertising thing, and we don't delve too deep into this, but we need to know the basics of it. Red is for power, yellow is fun, green is not only about money, it's also about growth and nature. It allows you to think that these things are real. Blue is for traditional, it's for the trust. And purple is the funky stuff. That's why Ally Bank, which is an online bank that, I mean, even their name Ally inspires this idea that they're doing things different and they're here to have your back. So they use purple, which is unlike what most banks use. The Wells Fargo thing is really interesting because Wells Fargo is one of the few banks that uses yellow and red as their color schemes. What are some other businesses? Feel free to throw in the chat or unmute. What are some other businesses that use yellow and red? I know some other ones. Things like McDonald's. Yep, we got McDonald's, Hardee's, In-N-Out, Google. Oh, Google does use yellow and red. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that because they have other colors there too. But the ones who mainly use yellow and red, a lot of them are fast food places. They're places that want you to make impulse decisions. And there's something about that color scheme that helps people make quick decisions rather than being more thoughtful. So it's very interesting that Wells Fargo, the most scandal-plagued bank, and feel free to talk to your students about the scandals of places like Wells Fargo, places like Citibank, places like Chase and Bank of America, the ones who have just long rap sheets that your kids are going to be familiar with one item or another, so that it doesn't become rumor or confusion, that you can address all of these things specifically. But it's funny that the place that has had the most scandals, Wells Fargo, also uses the fast food kind of thing. The thing that I want us to know about the color schemes with banks is this is you're delving into how our relationships with banks are a really big deal. When we build the bank itself, we ask these students to use these color schemes, to use the way that we build the bank, and to use your slogan, which requires symmetry, which requires rhyme, which requires specificity, which requires metaphor, to get across what you would do for yourself. We've got this in two different forms. I don't actually have the slides up here, but one of the forms that we do this is through designing a bank from the ground up. That's usually with younger kids, middle school age. And then for the older kids, for in high school, we actually relate this to a dating app, because your relationship with the bank is often like dating relationships, in that sometimes you've just been together for a while and you don't even remember why. So we use these types of dating app methods to get kids to recognize and decide whether or not they want to stick with the bank that they're with.
And I'd also say you'd be surprised when we do this exercise. There have been many times when students have either come up with a name for a bank or a slogan for a bank that actually already exists, right? So even though we're going through this exercise with them, we're actually all already familiar, right, with the ways that we go about kind of trying to influence people in making decisions. We've been influenced ourselves by even what we remember. It might not even be a bank that a student is a part of, right? But they just know it off of the top of their head. The same way that, you know, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, we all know that that's McDonald's, you know? So that's another thing that I think can be really interesting about this exercise.
That was Justin Timberlake. Do y'all know that? Yeah, knows that information everybody knew, that the ba-da-ba-ba was Justin Timberlake.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I'm I didn't even know that. It was Justin Timberlake and a rap group called The Clips. The Clips were, I think their big hit song was called Grindin' in like 2003 or 4. And they did a lot of work with Justin Timberlake. They wrote the lyrics, ba da ba ba, I'm loving it. And Justin Timberlake sang the hook. Now, there's a great example of something that uses symmetry in music, but not rhyme. The ba da ba ba rhymes with I'm loving it, not verbally, but in musical phrasing. Any of my musicians out there can understand that. I'm the jingle nerd here. Yeah, I found that out. I feel very randomly, but I think it's very interesting to think how heavily people dig into expertise to be able to make this work. Because I'm loving it seems like a very simple thing that, oh, I bet some intern just pulled that out of their behind and they're like, that's cool. No, they went to, and at the early 2000s when this came out, Justin was one of the biggest artists in the world and paid him a ridiculous sum of money to put together this jingle for y'all. The thing about that is not only does the music rhyme and the slogan give you positive feelings, but the artist, even if you weren't aware that it was him, you were aware of his work and you know and feel good and trust with these hit songs come on. So being able to use these things are ways that folks will play us into allowing advertising to make something feel like we want it. We help kids understand their relationship not only to advertising but to business themselves with this building a better bank situation. There is a lot of opportunity for kids to have fun with doing the drawing of a logo, an opportunity for kids to have fun with the creation of a name, creation of a slogan. I think this is something that is in the teacher notes in this section, but one of the things that's really fun is to allow kids to explore their niches, explore the things that are fun to them. Every single time I have done this build a better bank, there's at least one group that has a video game bank, right, Kai? They be having that video game bank where there's a lounge where you can play video games. And if you play this or that thing, we can give you a discount on that. And it doesn't matter if the niche feels like something that's unrealistic. Being able to tie the niche to the bank allows you to tie banking to the things that are in your life that you want to do and are real to you. Banking remains a difficult subject, great degree, because it is abstract, because it is something that they are either not dealing with or only dealing with on a limited basis. So any things that tie it to the things they want to do, either to make money, to save money, or to spend their leisure time with, will always make it so that the bank thing is more impactful and makes more sense. I want to move on in a minute to habits. I want to ask if there's any other questions about that part. And Kai, if you want to, because I was doing my rambling, if you wanted to ramble on a little bit about that too.
Chat seems pretty chill for now.
Yeah. Any last things you want to say about the banking before we move on?
The other thing I would just say is one of the most important things too to be thinking about as you're doing this activity with students is that part of the unconscious outcome, right, is hopefully that they'll be able to then identify these things in their real life, even if they're not kind of, don't become like banking sleuths, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised, even just, for me, when I kind of first came into this work, I noticed more now too, when I'm looking at, banks, when I'm walking down the street, right? Noticing even like, we all know that corner in our neighborhood where there's like suddenly 8 banks in one place, right? And so all you're getting is that sensory overload of color and design. We're helping students, right, learn how to visualize those things for themselves, right? So they know what matters to them, but to then be able to be more aware of what is being sold to them, right? What the marketing strategy is when a bank is coming to them, whether it's, that first suspicious credit card that they get in the mail from nobody in particular, or it's when they're looking for where's the first place I'm going to put my money.
Yeah, that's really helpful. When it comes to evaluating students, just like you're saying, a singular pain point being made aware of is a huge success for our kids. When students, I remember having students before where They told us that they didn't bank, they keep all their money in a shoebox under their bed. And we went through the process of designing a bank. And I remember asking them afterwards if they're going to take the money out of the shoebox. And they said, yes, but not yet, because they decided they only needed a bank when they want to start building towards bigger things like buying a house. They still had great distrust of banks and don't expect that just going through a single process will create trust or even great understanding of banks, because they're a big sprawling mess that are intentionally obscure so that we don't get all of it. But the kid was like, hey, I'm going to keep my money in the shoebox because I understand that and trust that. But when I want to start getting ready to buy a house, I'm going to start putting money into a savings account. I'm going to get myself some credit cards and I'm going to be part of the system. It's easy for people, because the systems that we deal with are so integrated into what we do. It's easy for people to abstractly say that they're going to cut themselves off from the system and then just go and do the thing they want. And we don't realize that these systems exist to make it so that it's really hard to do that. You know, the simple tip of, if you want to buy $1 million house, if you ever want to buy $1 million house, you're probably going to need a bank, and you're probably going to need credit, because it doesn't make sense for you to make $1 million before you buy $1 million house, when there are things in place that you can put down 200 grand, or in some places 35,000 for like FHA, and be able to buy a house and still have that money left over. So if we can give them these things and allow them afterwards to take from it the things that are most impactful, the things that are their deal makers or the deal breakers, these have a great impact on whether or not they're going to use banking services in the future and going to use them responsibly. Because, you know, I feel like this is a personal thing, and y'all can be wherever you are on that. I feel like all students don't need banks 100%, but all students do need banks for the certain situations that they're going to live in their lives. If you are just going to go live on a farm somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, then sure, maybe fine. You may not need a bank, and I don't want to deny people that reality. But if you don't have a cell phone, you're probably going to need a bank. Oh, here's some stuff about from Ronnie. It's interesting to hear about the distrust of banks. It was not something I thought a lot about, but my brothers do not have banks, and they're 52 years old, have never had accounts. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, only a little surprising, but not really. There are plenty of folks who they've been mostly off the grid. And like I said, you know, I often tell kids, I remember in St. Croix, a friend of mine in my rap group was always saying that he was going to move to Ghana and start a farm. And I was like, that's cool. You know, you go ahead and do that. And I went away to college, and I came home and I saw his mom, and I was like, hey, what my friend at? And he was like, oh yeah, he moved to Ghana with his girlfriend. He started a farm. I was like, oh, wow. Can I get his phone number? Oh, he ain't got no phone number. Can I get his email? He ain't got no email. The only time I'm ever going to see my high school friend again is if I happen to be walking through Ghana and bump into his farm. That's cool, right? Like, if that's what you want to do in your life, I am all for it. And, you know, do the thing that makes you happy and that's going to bring the world. Be off the grid if you're going to be off the grid. Most of us are not off the grid. And if you have intentions of being not off the grid, you have to do the things that are going to set you up for it. Walmart flip phones. Yeah, Walmart flip phones. Like, yeah, like I said, there's methods to do these things. But even then, you're interacting with Walmart, which is part of these big conglomerate structures. And it's so interesting how quickly and easily you end up inching your way back onto the grid. Starts off with your Walmart flip phones, but now you got to make sure that you're paying for your Walmart flip phone. And now you have to have this other stuff. And then there's this surveillance thing, and they ask you to sign an agreement. So as we're doing our thing, we need to make sure that we are, I don't like to use the word realistic, but we prepare ourselves for every eventuality so that we can have banking for when we're going to need them in the future. And also we can be aware of the pitfalls that may hit us so that we don't get in this situation where something bad happens and we completely leave the banking system because we're like, I can't trust any of this. Well, thank y'all. Appreciate sharing that about family too. So when it comes to banks and the things that we build with banks and the relationships that we have with them, this has a lot to do with our habits. Oh, and it's from Azurdi here. Rallies, checkers, advertises, new employees can get paid daily using the company's pay card. Yeah, that's a big thing that's been happening. Company pay cards and debit things like that. There are a lot of pitfalls with those in terms of the balances that are left over and your ability to get money out of them. Again, there's also the worries about being able to make interest off those and have them be insured. So that's something to talk about as well. Thank you for bringing that up. The company pay card thing is increasing. Folks are really wanting to do that. They're kind of trying to bring back the company towns from the 50s. There's a lot of talk about using Silicon Valley as a model for how they create white collar company towns, the way that they did blue collar company towns in the 50s with credit cards as a thing. Oh wow, that's funny. Yeah, I know you owe me a Coke, or I guess a whatever non-branded bubbly syrup soda. Yeah, that's to be more symmetrical again, I love the quote from good old Sammy Clemens, Mark Twain, who said that history does not repeat itself, it rhymes. And you can often find parallels to the ways that people are trying to either serve or take advantage of consumers by looking into past ways that people like to serve or take advantage of community. I owe my soul to the company store. Yeah, my peoples, y'all know. This stuff is going to be really, this is a huge part of what we're doing in the next session on the 22nd, where we're going to be talking about how the historical effects of business have a lot to do with how businesses treat us today, and a lot to do with talking more about why we don't tend to trust certain industries. I want to dig into a little bit about these habits. Habits are the stuff that we do regularly, and habits are so consternating. There's, the Power of Habit book and all these popular books that talk about changing habits. And I remember reading it, and my favorite part of the Power of Habit is when they say, so this book doesn't actually know how to change your habits, because there is no simple formula for changing habits. There are a million formulas for changing habits, but this is how habits evolve in our body. I hate it. I don't hate it. I don't even think about it. A lot of us think that habits are going to be fun. People say all the time, oh, when I get my stuff together, it's going to be on. And the reality is that it's only on in that, like, you don't get that it's on, so you're doing your thing. I didn't want to brush my teeth when I was a child. I don't know if you've had this in your life, or you've had a child who's like this. I remember being 5, 6 years old, and they're like, "Go brush your teeth," and I'm like, and they go brush your teeth. So I go into the bathroom, I turn on the water for like 30 seconds and shake it around. It's silly because, like, I could have spent that time actually brushing my teeth, but I'm trying to defy or whatever as a kid. And then I'm like 8, 9, 10, and I see that they make fun of the kid with the dragon breath, and I don't want to be the kid with the dragon breath, so I'm brushing my teeth. I'm really brushing my teeth, scrubbing, make sure I do it, all that stuff. And by the time I'm an adult, I'm not thinking about any of those things. I don't love brushing my teeth. I didn't end up loving brushing my teeth. I remember I asked students this, and there'll be like one kid who's always like, I love brushing my teeth. If you love it, that's fine. Most of us don't love brushing our teeth, but we do. Not even because we have fear of consequences anymore. We had that in the beginning, but now just because we do it. We know that it's a part of our day. It's a part of our life. We've made time for it. We've made room for it. We've made energy for it. We don't have any stress in our chests about these kinds of things. So we allow it to happen. And this is the thing about habits. I'm going to break down a little bit about how we do this more specifically on Kai, can you just start about rhythm? What is the whole thing with using rhythm to build habits?
Yeah, so we started off kind of thinking about this in the musical way, because that's how we do things, right? And that the music of rhythm, right, is about helping with memory. It's about finding ways to get the habit into your body, right? So that rhythm is kind of the way we think of it with habit building, is it's about finding where the habit is going to flow in your daily life, figuring out where to place it so that it feels smooth, so it feels streamlined. For anybody who's ever tried to like make time to like look at your money, look at your budget, it's a lot easier, right, to fit it into the rhythm of your day if instead of maybe allocating a whole day to budgeting, right? Sunday is budget day. Maybe you have that 20 minutes, right? That's part of your weekly routine that kind of keeps that sense of, right? Keeps that sense of order, that sense of, fitting it into the flow, filling it into the, if you will, the music of your life, if you will. So that's something that we try to model for students too.
I love that, using the money thing, because, a lot of times people be like, oh, I got my money Mondays, Or I got my whip out my wallet Wednesdays, and they'll use alliteration, which we have mentioned here on the slide. Alliteration for my non-English teachers, alliteration is just the other side of rhyme. It's just rhymes from the front instead of the back. And they do a similar thing of feeling more real and feeling more official. I mean, we use it in our own 3 R's of habit building thing. It sounds real because we're like, there's 3 of them and they're all R's. So of course they must be real. Now, once we've got our rhythm, and to talk about the toothbrushing thing, that was as simple as I do it before I go to school and I do it before I go to bed. That is a rhythm. It's a longer rhythm. You're not thinking about it as like I'm bobbing my head to it, but you know that these times of day, these are the times to do it. When it comes to looking at our money, if we have our money Mondays, or whip out the wallet Wednesdays, or take a look at our cash Tuesdays, or whatever we're calling that, doing that at the same time, even if it's messy, even if it's terrible, especially if it's terrible at first, is how we make it into something that's real. If you look at your finances on Monday during Money Mondays, and you basically open your bank account and then shuffle things around for 15 minutes and then close it, that may feel like a failure, but that's doing something, because when you come back next Monday, you know you can do that part. You've already got it open, and then you take the next step, and then you take the next step. And that's how you start building the reps. And I say reps more than repetition, because it's like when you work out, things don't necessarily get easier, but you get stronger with these. You build muscle memory so that you remember how to do these. Getting the muscle memory is such an important part of it. When we were rapping last time, practicing the freestyling thing, the thing that is the most interesting to learn is that it's not an intellectual activity. It is a physical muscle memory activity. So is all of talking. Some of y'all may have very measured speech, but when we're having a conversation, you don't sit, lie back, and write a whole dissertation to answer somebody when they tell you, how's the weather? You respond with how you're feeling. And that comes from your repetition of building the speech that you have. When it comes to being real for real about our money, or real for real about something as simple as brushing our teeth, the reps will build the muscle memory to the point where it is the same activity, but it feels lighter because you're so used to doing it. And that brings us to the reward. What's the reward? What does that even mean?
So, right, the reward, why we start, it's kind of like the point. And the thing about the reward is that it has to come from you. So even let's stay with the example of the brushing teeth, right? I always love this one. So a parent, right, or an adult might say, the reason you should brush your teeth, the reward for brushing your teeth is that you won't get cavities. And, you know, if you had a parent like I did, who was all about kind of like the drama of it all, it was like your teeth won't fall out when you're 20 years old and you'll just be, you know, walking around toothless. Like that was kind of the reward that was offered to me, right? Now for dialect, you know, when you hit kind of that middle school age, the reward became, I won't get made fun of because I won't have driving breath. Right? So if I stick to my routine, if I get my reps in, then the reward will be that, you know, I'm able to kind of be among my peers and not feel like I'm getting roasted, right? And the thing about the reward, why it's important, is because it gives us something to look forward to, right? And the reward, just like all these other steps that we're talking about, may evolve, right? So maybe even that, you know, Money Monday starts out of just being like, the reward for my Money Mondays is I'm going to finally understand what's going on in my bank account because I haven't been looking at it and I have no idea what's going on. Maybe that reward evolves to I can start planning for, you know, that house that I want to buy, right? And so those things can evolve, but the whole point of the reward is understanding that we're doing this, we're building this habit for a reason, for something that is going to add to our lives in some way. And that's why the really important thing is, and even when we're talking to students, right, oftentimes we may offer what that reward might look like for them, right? We might offer ideas of what that reward could be, but we're also trying to build a space where they can interrogate, right, for themselves, why would I do this? What is the incentive of me putting away, $5 every month? What's the point of building that repetition? What's the point of that rhythm for me? Right. And so for one person, it might be, I want to be able to buy those sneakers that I've been dreaming about without it, breaking the bank. For another person, it might be, I know I'm going to have loans for college and I want to feel like I'm on the way to being ready for that. And so that reward part is actually so important. And it's another point of what we are always talking about with this, right? Which is about values, right? What do you value? And how does what you do correlate to what you value? And how can even just one habit kind of add to that is sort of the big, the big why of it all.
Can I get a little deep with you, Kai, real quick? We didn't plan this out. Well, yeah, we didn't plan this one out. So I was just, as you're saying it, it made me think that I want to share in terms of the reward and where it is, because it's really important to understand that the reward is something that you start off with as an idea, and then the rug is pulled out and you're still doing it. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the initial reward for you for being a poet? Was it like, there's some information that people need to know? Was it, I want to be well liked? Was it, I want to look cool on stage? Like, what was the initial thing that made you want to poeticize and do it out to people?
The first thing was that I wanted to be heard, right? The first reward was, you know what? I feel like I'm not being listened to, in my, maybe my day-to-day life. So I'm going to write this poem and I'm going to get on this stage and I'm going to feel heard. The reward was, the validation of people saying, I see you and I hear you. That was when I was first coming into poetry, it was, I want to feel heard. 100%.
I like that. So you wanted to be heard. So since you wanted to be heard, you found time in your life to practice saying the things that allowed you to be heard, because you're not usually heard in your usual life. And then you started doing it a lot. You got into the repetition. And this may be difficult to articulate, but when did you realize that you no longer were looking to be heard? You were now making it so that people can be heard.
I think it was probably the moment when I realized that, because, I'm a poet, I used to go to workshop, for instance. And it's when I realized that when I was writing, the end goal wasn't, oh, I wonder if people are going to like this when they hear it. When the end goal wasn't other people's opinion of my writing anymore. When it became, I write for me. I write because not just I want to be heard by others, but I want to hear myself. I want to listen to what, to what I'm thinking, to what's going on in my life, and I want to put that somewhere. And once it did become about others for me, it opened me up to be able to say, I want other people to experience this too. What it's like to listen to yourself, what it's like to find a new way to be heard, right? Because I knew that was my initial, incentive. So it's like, how do I create a space for other people to feel heard too? And I don't think that shift happened for me until maybe like halfway through college, which was the first time I ever did, facilitated any kind of poetry. And realized, like I passed this phase for me, and now I can support others in this phase for them.
Word. So that's great. So it flips from being the thing that I need for me into the thing that is needed. And then you just start doing it. To get there, you must be smart, you must be real, you must be dedicated. So we got to ask, what about, before we do that, I had a big reveal, but I want to share with y'all, these are I know, I was like my big rousing thing. We'll get to that in a second. I want to share with y'all these 3 questions that we ask ourselves when we're building our habits, whatever the habit is. Rhythm, what does it look like in action, and how will you make it easy to remember and do? That's through scheduling, that's through setting calendars and making sure that you stick to that. Reps, how does it fit into your daily routine? How often, how many reps can you get? How many sets can you put in? And then what is the why? What makes you want to have this habit, and what will the benefit be for yourself and your others? Now, Kai just laid out all the reasons why they were really into doing poetry. First, for yourself, right, Kai? And then for the sake of poetry. And to do that, you have to really be dedicated. It has to really mean a lot to you. So what about people who don't have great willpower? What about the whole willpower thing? Are y'all familiar with the Marshmallow Experiment? Is this something y'all know about? Feel free to share in chat if y'all know about or have heard about the Marshmallow Experiment. I'll start going into it because we got about half-ish hour to go. The marshmallow test was just a study that was designed to test willpower. It's actually pretty cute on YouTube. You can see some versions of it where they have little kids and they give you a marshmallow, and either you eat the marshmallow in 5 minutes, or if you can wait 5 minutes, they'll give you 2 marshmallows. And that was supposed to be indicative of like who's got great willpower and who's going to be successful in the future. And then you can teach based on that. The smartest kid I saw was this little girl who was sniffing up the marshmallow, like, and then put it down. And then later you found out after she got her second marshmallow, she had hollowed out the inside of the marshmallow with her tongue and ate the whole thing. I'm like, wow, that's the one you got to watch out for. They really got some stuff going on. But so this thing that happened is in the 2000s, there were a lot of scientists who decided that they wanted to test these scientific theories and see if they actually are replicatable. And they found that this delaying gratification leading to greater personal responsibility wasn't true, that they weren't able to replicate it because it's not a predictor of your personal responsibility. But what they did find is it was indicative, I guess not a predictor, but it was indicative of your socioeconomic class. Now, just break this out into the regular life that you've seen in yourself and with your kids. When you are in a situation where you are promised tomorrow and routinely tomorrow doesn't come, we're going to go buy this thing tomorrow, I'm going to get you those new shoes, and we're going to take you out on this trip, you're going to go see your dad, you're going to go see your mom, you're going to get this thing, and it doesn't happen, we don't believe in tomorrow. Our brains have a very difficult time understanding the idea of tomorrow. I think I might have talked about this last month about how our brains literally don't think of us in the future as us. They think of us in the future as strangers when you do the brain scan stuff. So we have a lot of difficulty of understanding who we are in the future. And when we hit something that is a wall, we live by that wall because that wall is safety. Believing in the future when the future regularly doesn't come only leads to disaster, only leads to losing things. If someone says to try to hold on to this money because there's going to be something great tomorrow and we lose out on opportunities today, it makes it so it's not worth it. So it was a great indicator of kids who had gone through trauma to where they no longer believed in tomorrow. I think I like this line here. Daily life holds fewer guarantees. There might be food in the pantry. So there's a risk that comes from waiting. You have to take what you have while it's there. This is the love the one you're with kind of philosophy of the marshmallows. You know, good things don't always come to those who wait. So what about willpower and delayed gratification? Willpower is a finite thing. I've seen so many neurologists, behavioral scientists talk about this, about how it's nebulous and not exactly quantifiable, but it is finite. It is something that gets worn down. When we talked last time about the spending values matrix and spending in accordance with your values, we talked about doing the things that make you feel like you, doing the things that replenish you, doing the things that make you feel better. And that is simply creating rhythm, repetition, and habits that make you feel good about yourself and the situation you're in. You know, self-control is a contextual thing. Self-control is not always something that we ourselves have full control over. There are plenty of situations where we are in a community setting and we can not only deal with ourselves, we have to deal with the context of everybody else around us before we make decisions. We often talk about automating things because this takes a lot of our emotion out of the decisions that we're making. Our emotions, again, especially when unchecked, tend to drag us around rather than allowing us to make the decisions that we really want. The practical example is about saving, right? We say that saving is an action, not a quality or an amount. When we teach people about saving is another thing that our brains have really difficult time understanding. But when we teach kids about saving, we don't just talk about not spending money. This is more about the banks. We often talk about having a bank for your savings account that is a different bank from the bank you use in your checking account. because we want you to make sure that you have the action of having to move your money from one place to another so that you can take it out and spend it. And we also want you to do an action of saving. Again, saving is not the lack of spending. If you treat saving like the lack of spending, you will eventually spend that money. But if your saving is doing something, is not lack. As we showed in our yes box, our savings can be building towards things that we want, whether like in habit building, they are items like a house or a car or 6 months off to write the great American novel, or whether they are feelings, which is what evolves out of saving for those items. Having real savings, and a phrase that we've been using lately is capturing your savings and putting them in a place is an active thing, and it makes you feel like you were doing something good with your money. We're going to revisit the money personalities in a minute, but when we talked about money personalities last time, the paper chasers are often people who feel like if my money is not doing something, then I'm wasting it. And oftentimes they feel like keeping it in an account is wasting it by not doing something. And this simple flip of your mentality about how putting away active savings and making the action something that is part of your daily routine and your habit will allow those paper chasers to think about their savings as another stream of income. It's how we pay ourselves first. And then the last thing about marshmallows, don't measure what matters. Marshmallows aren't even marshmallows. Y'all know that marshmallows that you get routinely contain 0% marshmallow in them. The marshmallow is actually a delicious root that you mix with sugar and puff up and do other stuff with, and it's way denser than the puffed balls of air you get at the grocery store. That's one of my personal pet peeves, because I do enjoy me a good natural marshmallow. So I'd love to hear from y'all. I feel like I'm talking a lot. And Kai, I know I just did a long ramble there, so please feel free to fill in if there's any stuff that you would like to share. But I want to hear from y'all in the chat here. How do you discuss and support goal setting and progress tracking with your students in your classrooms? What are your methods? If you have methods, if you don't have any and you're like, I'm just willy-nilly, that's cool too. Feel free to talk about it. But Kai, any of that other stuff that you wanted to talk on, what folks are typing?
No, that was beautiful. I'm really excited to hear what our fabulous educators have to say about how they work with goal setting and stuff in their classrooms.
Cool. Yeah, while folks are typing up, one thing I want to mention about the goal setting that we do with students is that we give them the opportunity to write things down or not write things down. This is more weird behavioral psych stuff. Some people really need to write down their goals, and that's mad important for them. But there are plenty of students where writing down their goals is actually a detriment. I'm that student. When I do vision boards, I have to destroy them and put them away and just treat it as a fun thing, because if I have it there written down and I'm staring at it, something in my brain makes me think I've already done it, and it makes it harder for me to do the steps leading up to it. I am not enough of a psychologist to explain why, but that's certainly a thing that happens commonly. From Jeremy, I remember discussing mortgages with my students the year before last, and they said that the banks were simply hustling them out of their money. Woo, yeah, I mean, the thing about that is they're not wrong in certain situations. When you talk about how Wells Fargo, in particular, again, they bring them up a lot for this, they were accidentally foreclosing on the wrong places. They were foreclosing on and receiving next to nothing in terms of punishment. They would run up in a person's house. They were just having an average day, and they're running in a person's house and say, you have to get all your stuff out of here. We brought repo people, and they take your stuff and they destroy it. You don't even get most of it back because they destroyed it. And then they're like, oh, sorry. And you get very little out of it, certainly not enough to pay for the things that you've already lost and, the sentimental value and all those things like that. So I get why kids could be feeling like these banks, they're just there to hustle us, and they get so much money out of this buying a house, and why should we even pay them to do all this kind of stuff? Again, banks, like McDonald's, we were talking about fast food, like fast food places, like most of these restaurants, these aren't things you have to trust for everything. These are things that you only have to trust to do what the job is that they're supposed to do. The bank isn't your friend. The bank isn't a utility. So thank you for sharing that perspective on that. Any other ones that y'all wanted to share about ways that you support goal setting and progress tracking, or any of the other stuff? I really dig that from Jeremy talking about what they do with their kids and hustling them out of their money. We do talk a lot, by the way, about hustle in general and the idea of hustle culture, where we're socialized nowadays into thinking that continuous effort for absolutely everything and spending every waking second earning money is the only way to live. And that's not balanced and doesn't often work out for kids. And that's the way that we lead to burnout. So how to be balanced about living our lives so that the hustle doesn't overtake us. Oh, here's some stuff from Ronnie. Back in the day, we did immediate and long-term goal setting, including up to 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year goals, which was way too much. Yeah, the time-based goals, I don't know if you have opinions on these, but I don't really love them. I think that they can be fine, but I think that the time part of it is not really the thing that gets folks going. What I found with the goal setting thing is an effort-based thing. I always ask folks, and we do this with adults too, is what is the least you can do and what is the most you can do? What is the least amount of money that you need to make? What's the most amount of money that you need to make? What's the least effort you can put into putting away savings or building towards this business or starting to take care of your debt? And what's the most you can do? And once we've taken care of the least and we feel comfortable doing the least, to remember that we still have to reach for the most. More from Jeremy. I have a very hard time getting the students to look past the immediate future because so many of them have no promise of tomorrow, right? They're worried about what they can get right now. And I think that one of the discussions to have with students in these situations is the twofold thing. This is, I guess, taking back to what we we're just saying now about what are the things that we can have right now and what are the things that will build to us for the future. I like to eat healthy-ish. I like a salad. And I'm not eating my salad because I want to live till 110. And it'd be nice, if I'm salading it up for a while. So, y'all and your kids and your grandkids have to deal with my teacher trainings too. But I eat a salad because I want to feel good right now. And I think when it comes to a lot of our kids, we have to figure out ways that these rewards are the beginning and that the reps are the end goal reward. Like Kai was saying about wanting to do the poetry for yourself to be heard, and then understanding that people need to be heard, and that becomes the end goal. And that becomes a lot more easy to do in terms of your psychology and thinking about people in the future. A trick, by the way, Jeremy, that actually works. Again, I don't know enough about psychology to do this, to explain it, but it's a thing you can do. Looking at an older version of yourself makes you more likely to consider your future a real thing. So a thing that we've done with kids is have them take selfies and send them to us, and we put them on an app that ages you, and we send those back with a report about what you've done in your old age. And it has tremendous effect on students' ability to see themselves in the future and do stuff with it. Something from Ronnie. I will say in retrospect, looking back on those goals is fun. A friend of mine noted when he was 15, he wanted to be president of education someday. Today, he is president of a college, so kind of close in his world. Oh, that's really awesome. Yeah, I think that future planning and looking at goal setting super far in the future that can be fun in that kind of way. And I think if we are doing this with a plan to look back in it, it can be awesome. One thing we've done with a number of groups is the time capsule, and very similar to what we were saying about the aging your face thing. We've used time capsules to put kids to write down what their values are. And I think values are the thing that we put before goals, because goals are a thing that are abstract and become our parents, our teachers, society's goals if they're not important to us. And we have to figure out the big civilly for values are what's important to you. If we figure out what's important to you, what matters to you, what your values are, you can create some goalish kind of things around them. And the thing that really helps is when you're able to look back at them and to see how they're shaped and grown and changed. So I love that. Oh, thanks, Jeremy. I'm glad that that's helpful for you. Please try that out. That'll be a fun one. Let's move along. We got just a few little bits left of what we got to talk about. So this is going to be a little bit more about the technical stuff. Feel free to ask questions for us to dig into these things. But we talk about metrics a lot in school, right? What are we measuring? What are our rubrics? What are we grading these kids on? And When it comes to our metrics and what matters for us in this, it's about the process rather than the product, which we have another slide we're going to talk about. But like with a spending plan, it's not just about have you completed a spending plan, but do you know how to track your spending plan? Do you know how to match it to your values and what matters to you? For building a savings habit, do you know what your steps are in your yes box? Do you know what the things that you're trying to pull off? For saving at a bank, do you know why you even need a savings account? Knowing why you want to do stuff for kids in relation to money is so important. I know there's lots of education who are like, just give us the what, just give us the when, just give us the how, but the why is so really important for what we're doing. I want to bring this one up about process versus product. We're talking about the goal setting things, the process goals and the product goals. How does that work, Kai?
Well, okay. So the way we think about this is, right, our process goals are those long-term goals that are really, right, those habit-oriented goals when we're talking to students about what are the things that can be a part of the rhythm of your life, and what is the kind of the impact, that long-term impact going to be, or what do you want it to be, right? And when we do the process goals, that's about the journey. It's about thinking about how we do things, not just so what we do and how we do it, right? And the end game of that. So kind of the idea of like save a little bit every month, right? That's a process goal, right? It's about the action. It's about the journey of figuring out how that works. And then there are also, right, product goals, which are our short-term goals, our project-oriented. It's about exactly where we want to get to. And we use both of these in the classroom all the time, right? You know, teaching, if you're working on students, you know, growing in their writing skills, right? That's a process goal. That's something about trying to build habits about how we use grammar, how we build out our sentences, right? And a product goal might be, I want you to write an essay, right? And I want that essay to be a destination showing, you know, insert skill here, right? And this applies to when we're doing financial education too. Now, we are, when it comes to financial education, really big fans of the process, right? That the idea that savings isn't an amount. It's about taking that constant action, that it is a process. It's something that, and one thing I like about that map, that journey map, is that it's kind of all over the place and it's bobbing and weaving because and I think all of us can relate to this. That's what your relationship to money oftentimes is throughout your life, is that it changes, it ebbs, it flows. You have those, you know, streaks where you're like, wow, things are really going the way I want. And then sometimes there are streaks where you're like, things are a little rocky and I got to keep going. And so I think that can be a really important part about teaching when it comes to finance, is understanding that it's not just a product, right? Your life isn't just a product. Literally the act of living is in and of itself a process, and really not just encouraging students that way, but also affirming them, right? That they're not a failure, right? If these things take time.
Yes, I love that. You're not a failure if these things take time. And the thing with the products, we're not discounting the efficacy of products, right? When we're building the better bank and we're making the bank, we oftentimes in person, we would make it on poster board, you know, online, we're doing it in Canva and stuff like that. They create a product where they're like, wow, this is the bank, I built the bank, and that's awesome. The product itself is a doorway. It's a trick. It's that reward at the beginning of the habit building. The thing that matters the most with all of these classes we do is the debrief. The debrief is so important, and the debrief deals with what you got out of this and how you're going to use this going forward. When we look at our banks, and I was talking before about like, what's the thing that's most impactful for the kids who are like, the color psychology, the logo stuff meant a lot to me. That's something where the media literacy becomes very important, and helping students track their media literacy from where they're at is really great. And helping students track what matters to them about what they see and what they hear, that's really important. The product can be the gateway to getting so that where process stuff makes sense. I'll talk about a class that we don't offer, but I took as a kid that I didn't like because it didn't have follow-up. I was in one of those, stock market games, right? Where kids had, I think, 6 or 8 weeks to get their stuff together. And once they did that, they picked a winner, whoever had made the most money from the stock that they picked, and then we moved on. I remember I did well, so I was like, oh, I'm good at stocks. That doesn't measure my ability to be good at stocks. What it can measure is my risk taking, and specifically my risk taking in regard to investment. If that program was more process oriented, there would have been follow-up sessions where we dealt with different types of risk taking, and I got to take away and remember what my level of risk taking is, so I can take that into account when I'm doing my thing. Well, I just saw something here from Ronnie, a text from an anonymous source. I hope I'm not the only one thinking my own bank account and spending plan is in shambles. I can't possibly teach students this. How do we teach this when we don't feel like we've mastered ourselves? Sorry to
I love this.
Yes, I love it. Let's take a good chunk of time to talk about this. If anyone else wants to pipe up with their own feelings about this, let's do our thing with it, because I think this is really important. There's only a couple of other things very technical that I want to talk about. So let's go in. Kai, you're hyped, so you can start off.
So I want to talk about this because I'm 24 now. I started working with Pocket Change I think a year ago, and one of the things we talk about a lot in Pocket Change is credit. Right? What it means to have a credit card, what it means to do whatever. And when we started doing that work, I didn't have a credit card. I have been part of, the debit squad for, my whole life. And I have, had the impacts of that. Right. And I was teaching this work, right, and having to learn at the same time, because I didn't get a credit card until actually very recently for the first time. So I'm literally learning as we go how to have my own relationship to credit, to things that we're talking about with students. And I think the important thing, right, and I think this can kind of be a shift sometimes about what it means to be educators, right, because oftentimes we are supposed to be an authority of knowledge, right, that we're supposed to be imparting knowledge that by virtue of us teaching it, we are, modeling for students that we know what we're talking about, right? But the most important thing about talking about finance is that the conversation itself, right, is part of what you're modeling. So, and we talk to teachers a lot too, who are like, I'm not comfortable talking about, my own money situation with my students. And you don't have to, because what we're also encouraging them to understand is that it is a process, right? That we are all in process. The fact that it's not a product, right? That, the end goal isn't necessarily that once you bought a house, you've completely succeeded at financing, you can high five yourself and you're done, right? That part of that up and down is what is important about this conversation in the classroom, is that talking about this information is about offering perspectives to students, offering tools for students to be able to figure things out for themselves moving forward, offering products, right? Like having students maybe work on a spending plan for themselves, what that might look like, a product that's part of building out that process. And so we are always learning ourselves about the same things that we're teaching our students, especially when it comes to finance. And so, dialect, you can talk a little bit more about what that can look like in the classroom, but I just want to affirm that that is a real reality about teaching this stuff, is that we're working on it ourselves. I think about that literally every time we walk into a workshop, because And I think dialect connects with this too. We're still in process, right? Talking about this is not because we are the pinnacle of what it means to be, financially, stable and whatever, right? We're all in process, and that's actually what's most important about talking about this with our students and being in the classroom, right? With young people talking about this stuff, is for them to know that you don't just have to be talking to a financial planner or an executive at a financial whatever to have this conversation, that you can have it with anybody and it be valuable.
Thank you for that. I just saw also from Lizette, how we tell your students the best way to learn it is to do it, to be hands-on. The same thing goes for us. When we do it ourselves, we learn and become better teachers, and you learn with your students. I agree with that. I want to talk a little bit about competition that we have with other types of businesses. Our competition is with people who do those Instagram ads or those articles that say, I just paid off $30,000 in debt, and so can you. No, you can't. I just lost 50 pounds, and so can you. No, you can't. I just won the lottery, and so can you. No, you can't. Or maybe people do, but not because of what you told them to, because you don't have a process. You only have the end result. And a lot of times there's this whole thing of like, well, if we don't have the end result, how can we give people what we're doing? I'm a teacher because I didn't like school. I thought that a lot of the things that were being brought and put together in my classes were either incorrect or were put together in a way that wasn't helpful. So I got into education. I got into finance education because of the inequities that are being brought in all of our finance places, especially the idea that if we don't know enough about our money, if we don't have enough money, it's because of our personal failures. That's why people talk about personal responsibility as a boogeyman, as a dog whistle, because personal responsibility ostensibly is a good thing. We should be responsible for a person. It should be that we are able to respond to things, but we can only be able to respond to stuff that we have within our purview. If we don't know about finance, it's because finance is opaque. When we talk about credit, do y'all know that none of us knows where credit comes from? There are 3 private companies that do whatever they want with credit stuff and have it in a black box. When you go to Credit Karma to look at your credit score, that's a guess. Your FICO score is even something that is not available to you in terms of the math. We teach to the best of our ability what are the percentages, facts, and figures that go into this money stuff, but so much of it is not only made up, but is intentionally held from us. We are not going to be experts. The fact that we are not experts, the fact that we are not pretending to be experts and not being like, I paid off 30,000 in debt or whatever thing, it makes us more authentic to our students. It makes it more real with what they see going on. So being honest about where you're at is perfectly fine. Being real with yourself as well as your students about where you're at in this journey. Having the most money, more often than not, if we're looking statistically, means being born with that money or being gifted or entering some sort of lottery, whether it being a talent lottery, a random luck lottery of your business getting picked second or third, or marketing, or you had the most symmetrical face, or all of these types of variables that lead into it. Those are not things that make it so that you are great at teaching what you got going on. Oh yes, April, we can definitely talk about how credit scores are as old as Taylor Swift. Credit scores are as old as Taylor Swift, y'all. They're the same age, because I know that because 1989 is one of her albums. That's like her birth year, right? So credit scores, this is, I think we're going to talk a little bit about it next month when we're doing our stuff about values, but credit scores came from racist, sexist rumors. People would say, hey, I went to this place and I saw that the shop owner commits adultery and talks to Jewish people, so you shouldn't trust them, give them lower credit. Credit scores come from such garbage. And I tell you, when we talk to students about credit scores and we start detailing all the contradictory stuff, it breaks my heart every time to see those faces drop. But the thing about it that's good, and the thing about it that works, is we get to be upset all over again with them. They get to be upset with us. We get to see what these things are and make decisions for ourselves about how much we want to engage. If you are so disgusted that you want to build yourself a nest egg and move off the grid, cool. We can put together our goals, plans, and process to make so that you can get off the grid and stay off the grid without having to be beholden. If you look at that and you say, I want to take over and become the new CEO, we can put the process in place for us to do those things. And you don't have to be the one who has built yourself up to being a CEO to teach students how to build the processes to make those things happen for yourselves. Mind you, by the way, about all this finance stuff and us knowing and not knowing, this is something that I think is really important for us to start building for ourselves so that we can be confident in this. I'm not saying that you're going to be rich. If y'all wanted to go out there and be rich, then you would all be famous rappers like Ronnie and doing your thing all over the place. You would be in some business that was meant for building wealth. We're in a business meant for helping people. Then you're going to be able to help your folks do the stuff that they need to do. You have your processes and you share your process with them so they can do the things that they need to do. You not having a lot in savings, you having a lot of debt, you having confusion over certain financial systems doesn't mean that you're bad at money, that you're stupid, that you're wrong, or that you're alone. It means the opposite. It means that you're in it with all of us. And being in it with all of us, we can share it with all of us. Is that helpful? If there's any other stuff that y'all want to share about that, please hit me with that too. Feel free to show those in the chat or unmute if you're feeling emotional like me about it. This stuff always makes me feel emotional. I think it should. Money is a very emotional thing. All right. With the couple minutes we have left, I'm going to run through the more technical things. We were talking before about our money personalities. To bring this back, these are 4 money personalities: your complicator, contemplator, paper chaser, and money monk. And one of the activities that we have students go through, and since we just have a few minutes, if you want to throw in chat, you can, but it's not necessary. We ask people to share their money buddy stories. This is something that we do after going through the money buddies, not money buddies, the money personality stories, going through the money personalities, digging into that, and then coming back after the habits. After we start talking about our habits and we start mentioning how our money personality affects our habits, we ask kids to share these stories about when their money personalities has either worked for or worked against the things that they're trying to build, the habits that they would like to have. I'm a money monk, and we talked a little bit about habits and doing a thing and brushing our teeth. Honestly, it wasn't even just that I wanted to not be the kid with the dragon breath. It's like I realized being a kid with the dragon breath is bad, and because it brings dragon fire to the rest of the class. I didn't want to hurt the rest of the class by doing that thing. So that was what mattered to me about it. How do the money personalities, your tendencies, the way that you lean about life, how do they show up in your habits? And how can you use that to make it easier to build your habits and get the things out of your way that are messing with you? Thank you. There's a link for the money personality quiz. You can take it at any time. It's very fun to have spouses, children, families take it together, because when you look at the money personality dynamics, you can learn a lot about yourself. This came up in a lot of what we were just talking about a minute ago, toxic positivity. What's the thing? Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you fall amongst the stars, which is factually inaccurate. Astronomers will tell you, but whatever. But I like this one. Even if you miss, you get to die in space. There is this whole idea, as we talk about the reps, as we talk about the habit building, as we talk about the process, that hard work and busting your behind, shooting for the moon, creating unrealistic expectations, putting pressure on yourself is a good thing, because if you put a lot of pressure on yourself, you'll get a little out of it. And that's the way life works. And to be honest, that is kind of the way life works in highly competitive places. I remember a basketball player who said that he was the best basketball player ever, and everyone was calling him out on it. They're like, "You're not even an all-star. What do you mean you're the best basketball player ever?" And he said, "I have to say that to myself, because that's the only way I can get on the court with the best basketball players in the world and do this thing for myself." And there are ways that we can infuse ourselves, that we can inspire ourselves and make ourselves feel good and powerful and strong. But when it comes to making money, when it comes to business, if we continue to put everything on ourselves and don't acknowledge the systems that place limits, that place ceilings, that make things detrimental, then we are only going to be in a place of depression. And when we're depressed, we get taken advantage of. And these aren't just things like I don't have money, or I'm not going to have money, or I'm not going to have this or that. It's also stuff about the system. It is stressful to me when I think about how there are people where if I go into this thing and make this money in this place, I know I'm harming other people. I'm taking money out of their backs, and I don't want to be doing that. So then I don't engage with them because I don't know how to deal. Toxic positivity can get in the way of all of the things that are our goals. Kai, anything you want to share about that before we roll?
I just want to echo so much of what you just said. And I think the big thing too is that again, it's not about kind of giving students a cynical worldview, right? It's actually about affirming them in the fact that you don't have to, pressure yourself into, being, the next trillion billion dollar mogul if that's not the pressure that is going to give you the tools you need to reach whatever your goals are, right? And just to really mostly just echo so much of what you just said. That was really on the money.
Cool. Thank you. You seem like you had some other things. And people looking at you like, are you partying? So one of the things that we ask is, looking at how we support students with their ability to respond. I like to break up responsibility into that to make it more actual, factual, not as abstract. Look at our challenges and our obstacles. Look at our mistakes and our missteps. Look at uncertainty and look at injustice, and look at how these things affect the way that we make our decisions. And it's don't have answers for them. Again, money is so emotional. You know, see the SEL chart and the way that things work. The biggest thing about getting these emotions together is it's okay to feel them. In fact, you have to feel them even when it's uncomfortable. This is the part that's really hard when working with your students. You have to allow these things to be uncomfortable and sometimes stressful, to get real with our discomfort so that we can do the things that we need to do. Now, to be real quick about some of the longer text here, because I know we have to get out of here in a minute. You know, when it comes to the SEL, we do simple things like check-ins to get self-awareness. We use a collective breath to manage ourselves, and the yes box to give ourselves a guide. For social awareness, we ask about these systems that we were just talking about and how they affect our lives. For the relationship skills, we ask about our relationship to each other and our relationship to ourselves, with the design event, with the money buddy stuff that we do. And we'll be talking next time about responsible decision making, meaning making decisions in line with values. Basically breaks down to this stuff: exploring your self-identity and emotions, redefining what responsible decision-making means, and that's by taking your emotions into account, taking collective action to reach your goals, knowing that it does take a village to build anything. You build these learning relationships with your peers, and then you're able to do these things you want to do. This last thing I want to say real quick before we go is about how intergenerational conversations are really important. I think I lost a little bit of this time while talking about the other stuff there, but when it comes to intergenerational conversations, a really important thing that I want y'all to remember is this is for all of us. Like y'all are saying that we have some difficulties with like dealing with like certain aspects of money, so do parents. And parents aren't stupid. Parents aren't wrong. Parents aren't alone when you talk to them about these things. I really got to implore y'all not to teach your kids to not be their parents. I see that so often where, you know, even parents are like, I want my kids to not share my mistakes and not do and be like me. That tact really isn't going to do much to help build a good, healthy financial family structure. What does help is having uncomfortable conversations and being able to share equally. We teach kids on their own how to talk to their parents about money. We teach parents how to talk to the kids about money, and then we put them in a room together and they can peer learn with each other. And that's how we really make beautiful stuff. To make this stuff happen, oh, thank you for that, Peggy. I really appreciate that with the lessons. How we have the intergenerational conversations is to remember to be open and accepting about what we're doing, like radically accepting of everything. Talk about the big goals and then break them down into small pieces. When it comes to the rhythm, take the rhythm of yourself, share it with the rhythm of your parents, and create the rhythm of the room. This is our family practices and values. And a big, big thing to talk about are these systems that hang over all things and the money myths that come out of it. Because if we don't address the money myths, then they continue to grow. It's why nobody wants to check their credit score, because they think that if you check your own credit score, that your score will go down. That is a myth, but it comes from stuff. And being able to address that makes things so much easier. Again, when you get the slides, you'll be able to check out our cribbling map, a pacing guide, and the full curriculum. Thank you, Katie. There is an evaluation for the stuff that we're doing. Feel free to check that out. And for next time, remember what questions a challenge might be answering, what questions you might be uncomfortable answering, and how do we teach you about money habits without even realizing that. So we've got a survey for y'all to take. I was kind of flying through the last part, so if you have any questions about that, please feel free to throw that in chat. Otherwise, we'll play the Pockets Change theme, finish filling out the evaluation, and then we can get on out of here. Oh yes, make sure that you do your evaluation so you can get your certificate. Thanks for staying an extra couple of minutes too. I really thought that that was an important discussion to get into the whys.
In your pocket and need the number to change, but it flies without your pocket, ain't even keeping the change. If you gotta find the pocket so the
Thank you
can change, because you've been acting out of pocket and need to make a change. Dum dum diddy dum. Some dumb idiom. Dum dum diddy dum. Don't fall for some dumb idiom. They try to catch us while we sleep and they think we're cretins beneath them. The reason we fighting over crumbs instead of freedom. They want us to need the secret is there's no secret. It's just white supremacy. If you ain't afraid to speak it, financial literacy means that I understand. Resilience means that I can overcome it. Let's change the way we talk about finance. That's the only way we'll ever get justice. Make your money work. Dum dum diddy dum. Can't buy happy. Dum diddy dum. Is money. Dum dum diddy dum. Don't fall for some only got $1 in your pocket and need the number to change, but it flies without your pocket, ain't even keeping the change. If you gotta find the pocket, feel the rhythm and change. Cause you've been acting out of pocket and need to make a change. Like Gertrude Stein would say, money is always there, but the pockets change.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome.
We're
Thank
at
you.
time, so feel free to throw us anything real quick right now before we go, or just email us afterwards if you have any other follow-up or stuff that you want to wrap about before we get to our next session. Our next session on the 22nd, we'll be dealing with values. We're going to get very heavy into the history of things and how they affect today. Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate not just your attention, but all the vulnerability that y'all shared about these things and these questions. None of your questions were wrong or dumb. They're wonderful things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you being here. Just so you know,
Ronnie,
we
you're
had a couple of
muted,
suggestions
Ronnie.
in
Oh, there you
text.
are.
There we go. Couple of suggestions, pockets change, how to pick the right ponies. Just a suggestion for next time. We can work on that one. A couple of others.
How to
Thank you
the
for
right
being
phone
here.
if we got you. Yeah.
I think I'm cutting out on everybody. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.